Take a network break. I'm Drew Conry Murray. John is away this week, so we're joined by Mr. Tom Hollingsworth of the Future Room Group. He's also host of many Tech Field Day events and keeper of an excellent hoard of dad jokes. Tom, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's Friday, so I'm going to dispense with the usual dad jokery because, this is serious news and we need to be serious or something, I guess.
Something like that. If a dad joke creeps in, it's fine. And today we're going to cover Broadcom getting testy over licensing, new private cloud offerings from HPE, AWS turning to AI to help with VMware migrations, Cisco earning results, and more. We're sponsored today by NordLayer. NordLayer combines VPN, access control, and threat protection in a single platform. With NordLayer, you can give users secure remote access to internal systems while enforcing granular control over who accesses what, from where, on which device. You can find out more at nordlayer.com/networkbreak. And here's an exclusive offer for Network Break listeners. You can get up to 22% off NordLayer yearly plans, plus an additional 10% off with the coupon code NetworkBreak-10. Try it risk-free with a 14-day money-back guarantee at nordlayer.com/networkbreak. And then stick around after the news. We have a sponsored Tech Bytes conversation. We're talking with Palo Alto Networks about how they're addressing emerging AI risks so that organizations can take full advantage of AI. We're going to talk about its Prisma Airs. This is a new platform to protect AI applications from threats like malicious software and prompt injection, and the Prisma Access browser, which includes security features to protect organizations as employees start to use AI applications and tools. All right, we'll kick it off with a red alert. A couple of Google items. Google has patched a vulnerability in its Chrome browser that could lead to full account takeover. The bug, which is CVE 2025-4664, has been added to the list of known exploited vulnerabilities by the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Google says the update is going to be rolled out over the coming days and weeks for Windows, Mac, and Linux. And in related news, Google has made a change to the Chrome browser so that the browser won't run with administrator rights when launched on Windows. Bleeping Computer reports that, quote, Chrome will now automatically de-elevate when users try to launch it with elevated permissions. Tom, thoughts on that?
Well, I looked up the CVE, and it's kind of a low priority compared to the ones we normally report on, right? Like this one's knocking around at like a 4 or 5.
Yes.
But I think it's because it's a very odd exploit. Like it requires a certain malform package to be there. And of course, it's patched. It did get added to the known vulnerability exploitation list. So that means that the government has 3 weeks to patch it. So it's at least out there in the wild. I do like the change to no longer having Chrome run with elevated privileges because, ladies and gentlemen, it's 2025. Ain't no software that isn't defragging your disk needs to run with elevated privileges at this point. And how often do we get to say that Microsoft beat Google to the punch on something?
Yeah, Microsoft apparently already does this with its Edge browser, so Google's actually following Microsoft here. Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, happy to see it. Again, it just makes sense not to run this with admin privileges. All right, heading to the news. The news website, The Information, reports that Arista Networks is, quote, in the process, end quote, of acquiring VeloCloud. VeloCloud's an SD-WAN provider that currently sits in the VMware portfolio inside Broadcom. The Information cited an unnamed source in the article. I reached out to Arista for an official comment. I hadn't gotten a response as of recording time on Friday, May 16th. So given that this isn't actually public news, I don't have a lot to say. Tom, any thoughts?
I will say that if this deal happens, and we've seen several of these that are either not actually happening or fall apart at the last minute, this is a good pickup for Arista. It means ultimately that they are going to have to analyze what they're doing with their SD-WAN solution, because I know that Broadcom currently sources some of their software to other companies, and I don't know if that's going to come across in the transition. The other thing is that a lot of people have kind of wondered what's going to happen to VeloCloud now that Broadcom has kind of got this focus of if it's not VMware Cloud Foundation, we don't want it. Mm-hmm. You may recall that they tried to offload Carbon Black, and there weren't any buyers for Carbon Black, so that's why they kind of kept onto it. I think that this will go a long way, if this happens, to restoring some of the prestige around VeloCloud. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that you and I were talking about how amazing it was that we had VeloCloud and Viptela and CloudGenix that were all leading the charge on SD-WAN, and now look where we're at with all of those. And we all know that Arista is not a company that makes splashy acquisitions, if you will. They bought some companies over the years like Awake Security, Big Switch Networks, Pluribus Networks, where it's kind of below the radar,
right?
But they incorporate those products pretty efficiently into what the core of the company is about. That data center networking piece. So I think that this, if it happens, would be a good move. But again, we're citing unnamed sources inside of an organization that are not authorized to comment, and so it's like, who knows at this point?
Right. Yeah, I guess I'm going to save my powder to see if this actually happens, but I think my thoughts generally align with yours. So, but I will,
That's fair.
yeah, I will hold it there. Moving on, although there's Broadcom's going to be coming up a lot in this show. Ars Technica reports that Broadcom is sending cease and desist letters to VMware customers with perpetual license with expired support contracts. The letters warning customers with these expired contracts they must, quote, stop using any maintenance releases / updates, minor releases, major releases, updates or extensions, enhancements, patches, bug fixes, or security patches, end quote, or they will risk claims for infringement of intellectual property rights and subsequent legal action. So we know that since acquiring VMware in 2023, Broadcom has shifted from perpetual licensing to subscription packages, often at much higher prices and bundled with features that customers have to pay for even if they don't use them. Ars Technica is reporting that Broadcom seems to be sending these letters to companies whose support contracts have expired, even if they've moved off VMware or haven't installed any updates. And I guess my take is Broadcom might legally be within its rights here, but it's just another example of the way it's heavy-handedly dealing with VMware customers and driving many places to look for alternatives.
Yeah, part of me is a little sympathetic to Broadcom on this because they have an army of people who are like, this is the contract that you signed in perpetuity to say that you will use this version and this version only. I think there's like a little carve out for really important security updates, like the kinds of security updates that like they still release for Windows XP way out of band or something like that.
Yes.
But like my issue with it is if the purpose of this is to encourage, and I use the quotey fingers here, encourage your users to re-sign their support contract, I don't think that that's going to happen. Like if you go to somebody who has a perpetual license for, I don't know, vSphere 6.5 or something, and you're like, listen, you can't install any more patches. Like you're going to have to keep running it just the way that it is right now. And if you install any more patches, then we're going to take you to court. Then my response would be, okay, then we won't install any more patches. And then in about 6 months, when I have a new solution up and running, you better not email me again. Like, I feel like they're chasing off, maybe even at this point, not even potential customers, possible customers down the road if they really realize there's a workload they can't migrate or something like that. But it comes back to the whole slamming the door in the face of the people who have decided it for the time being that they don't want to do your support contract. And we all know that the reason for this is because companies that are massive software companies aren't making money off of selling software anymore. They're making money off of monthly or yearly contracts for that software. They're trying to get people onto that subscription so that they have the revenue coming in to justify the expense of purchasing VMware. And to them, a company that is not providing them with a yearly contract amount is effectively a drain on their resources, and they don't want them anymore.
Yeah. So on the one hand, I agree with you. Broadcom has been very clear about what it was going to do with VMware sort of since the acquisition started. They're very clear that they're primarily interested in very large customers whom they're sort of gambling aren't going to move off of VMware because it's really hard to when it's that deeply sunk into your organization. So these smaller, less profitable customers, they're happy to drive them off. I think the VMware user community is like, why are you being kind of like dicks about it though? So, which, two sides. Broadcom has the legal right and everybody else is like, okay, yeah, but take it easy. And actually, frankly, it seems like Broadcom's strategy is working. In their Q1 results, which we covered a few weeks ago, their software revenues were $6.7 billion, up 45% from the previous year. And while that software revenue also includes CA and Symantec, but prior to that VMware acquisition, Broadcom software revenue was growing in single digits. So they are making money out of this. Moving on, but sticking with the fallout of Broadcom licensing changes to VMware, AWS has announced a new agentic AI service that claims can speed up migration of VMware to AWS services. So back in 2024, AWS said it could no longer resell VMware Cloud on AWS. You had to get it from Broadcom. Customers could not renew subscriptions or add new services from AWS. So fast forward to last week, AWS has launched what it's calling AWS Transform for VMware. It's an AI service that can automate critical migration steps, including application discovery, dependency mapping, migration planning, network conversion, and EC2 instance optimization. AWS is claiming that in testing, it was able to create migration wave plans for 500 VMs in just 15 minutes, and that partner pilot trials have cut execution times by up to 90%. So AWS is turning to AI to help give you a migration path off of VMware.
This sounds to me like they're trying to reduce the initial friction that we see in these instances where customers are deciding, well, I don't want to be on VMware anymore, but I don't even know where to start because
Mhm.
VMware is all I've known forever.
Mhm.
So what they're saying is, cool, well, run this tool, and if you have, let's just say 500 VMs, it'll migrate 490 of them and tell you this is how easy it's going to be. Then you've got to figure out how to migrate the other 10 that were the exceptions, right? And usually that's something stupid, right? Like it's an out-of-date OS, or there's like some kind of weird hardware dependency in the underlying machine that doesn't translate well to what AWS is offering.
Mhm.
But I mean, if you can get 490, if you can get like all but 2% of them over there, like that's going to be valuable to the stakeholders, right? Because they're going to look at what is it going to cost for us to renew our support license next year versus the cloud spend. And if you're running an AWS, if you're running VMware in AWS, you already had the cloud spend. Like
Right.
that,
If you were
you're
running
just trading.
VMware on AWS, you were already paying twice anyway. So,
Yeah. And we know that this was originally a goal of VMware back in the day, was to prevent people from just wholesale jumping to AWS. They're like, well, if you still love what we did with vSphere, you can still run it in AWS and pay AWS. You just get to pay us too,
Mhm.
and we'll make it easy for you. And now AWS is flipping that on its head and saying, oh, well, if we can't resell those because you want the money, then we'll just come up with our own way of running things natively on AWS, which again kind of goes back to that whole discussion of if you're not willing to work with the largest cloud provider on the planet on these things, is it because you don't like sharing, or is it because you think that you have better solutions?
Mhm.
I don't have a clear answer right now, because to me, 50% of something is still better than 100% of nothing.
Yeah. Again, it's sort of like, Broadcom has some very strong ideas about what it wants to do. Those ideas may not be clear to the rest of us, but they are executing, and now AWS is also executing. Um, I'll link it in the show notes. There's a blog post from AWS about AWS Transform that's clearly taken some shots at Broadcom. It says, quote, many enterprises still rely heavily on legacy IT infrastructure, particularly mainframes and VMware-based systems. These platforms have been the backbone of critical operations for decades, but they hinder organizations' ability to innovate, scale effectively, and reduce technical debt in an era where cloud-first strategies dominate. I know it sounds very polite, but I feel like in tech world terms, this is definitely like a flying middle finger to Broadcom when you call somebody legacy. The other thing is, I don't know if this being an agentic AI service is going to be an enticement to customers or of a warning flag, but that's what they're leaning into.
Yeah, the rush to have an agentic AI answer for every problem feels very much like, please buy our stuff. But I also feel like this is the kind of thing that AI is kind of suited for. Like, you feed it a set of inputs and you're like, okay, make the other environment look like this one automatically, and it goes, okay, cool. So you're running this many cores and you're using this many cores. But yeah, you could have called it anything. You could have called it a bash script for all we care. But of course, the people who buy agentic AI solutions for the name alone are the ones who control the purse strings.
Right. I assume that went into their thinking, yeah. One last note, AWS says that the core features of AWS Transform, including assessment and transformation, are available at no cost to AWS customers. So again, leaning in hard on getting folks off of VMware. Right, a quick break to tell you about our sponsor, NordLayer. Securing remote access is easy with NordLayer. NordLayer combines VPN, access control, and threat protection in one easy-to-use platform. With NordLayer, your users get secure remote access while you get to enforce control over who accesses what, from where, on which device. NordLayer works across Windows, macOS, iOS, Android, and Linux, so you can support all kinds of end-user devices while still meeting compliance and security requirements. NordLayer offers granular access, encryption, VPN usage monitoring, device posture security, identity and access management, and threat protection. NordLayer is powered by NordLink's VPN protocol, which itself is based on WireGuard, a fast, efficient protocol for building encrypted tunnels. NordLayer is toggle ready with no hardware and no complex setup to get users up and connected. You can find out more at nordlayer.com/networkbreak. And here's an exclusive offer for Network Break listeners. Get up to 22% off Nord Layer yearly plans, plus get an additional 10% off with the coupon code networkbreak-10. Try it risk-free with a 14-day money-back guarantee at nordlayer.com/networkbreak and use the coupon code networkbreak-10. Back to the news. HPE is also seeing an opportunity to woo unhappy VMware customers. HPE announced an upgrade to its private cloud offering called HPE Morpheus VM Essentials. This is a software package with multi-hypervisor support, including VMware, as well as HPE's own HVM hypervisor. The HVM hypervisor is priced per socket, and HPE claims it can reduce licensing costs as much as 90% compared to what HPE says is, quote, available market data on the cost of existing virtualization licensing. So not a direct call out to VMware, but I think the message is pretty clear there.
I would just be curious what the quote unquote existing market is, because I feel like we all know what the existing market is. And that's not to say that there aren't a lot of companies out there that are killing it in that space. I mean, Nutanix has their Acropolis hypervisor. Scale Computing has been using KVM for years, but they're also a little bit more focused on certain segments of the market, being hyperscalers and hyperconverged infrastructure and things like that. I think that HPE's play is different than AWS's, because what HPE is trying to offer is the ability to provide hybrid cloud, right?
Yes.
So buy GreenLake, pay us monthly for GreenLake or yearly or whatever your contract is, but we can run stuff in your data center that needs to stay there, financial, medical, education, name it, whatever restrictions need to be there. But also you can burst up to our cloud and use things there, but it's the same, right? It's using HVM, which I'm assuming is some kind of a variant of KVM, but built on Morpheus, which was a great acquisition, by the way.
Right, this comes from an acquisition, yeah.
Right, and so they're able to kind of stretch that cloud. So that means that you can adjust where your spend is as needed through GreenLake, which keeps it all in-house with HPE. And we're starting to I get the feeling we're getting back to that whole, we can provide everything you need, as opposed to what we had previously, which was, the V block or the, whatever flavor of V block it was. It's VMware running on our servers with somebody's storage, and it just worked. And now it's our hypervisor running our servers with our storage or our whatever and our cloud or our cloud agreements. And then you don't have anything to worry about, because it's all seamless, because that's what we hear, right? Is this multi-cloud idea of I want to run here for spot pricing, but I need to be over here for regulatory.
Yeah.
And people don't want to have to think about it. They just want to log into a dashboard and say, move these things here to make me a little more efficient this month.
Yeah, and keeping it within the family, there's also an opportunity to bring in HPE Aruba switching for your networking needs inside this private cloud as well. HPE also announced a new virtualization modernization service to help customers re-platform workloads, migrate data, and educate team members. Again, to me, this is HPE not saying directly we can help you get off VMware, but definitely a nod and a wink to that. Moving on, Riverbed has announced new WAN accelerators in its Steelhead product line. Hardware appliances range from 60 gigabits per second of data movement to 200 megabits per second, all running Riverbed's Rios 10 operating system. Riverbed also said its Steelhead Cloud, which is designed for public cloud deployments, is newly available in Oracle and Google Cloud. You could already get it in AWS, Microsoft. And the company also said its Steelhead line will support post-quantum cryptographic algorithms, though it didn't provide details on which ones post-quantum encryption support will be available in the second half of 2025. Any thoughts, Tom?
Now, there's a name I've not heard in a long time. I was actually having a conversation with somebody about this last week, where we were talking about the fact that Riverbed used to be the king of WAN acceleration, right? Could have been the king of SD-WAN if they'd have just flipped on SD-WAN on all of their Steelheads on day one, and they could have been the largest SD-WAN provider on the planet. And what's happened is that the market for what they provided has kind of passed them by. You don't need to WAN accelerate stuff when it goes into the cloud. It just stays in the cloud, right?
Right.
Well, it turns out that with hybrid cloud, people need to move data back and forth between on-prem and the cloud. And we're back to that. Now, the question that I have is, will the Steelheads provide the software support for the data sets that we're using? Because if you look at the release from Riverbed, they throw those two pesky letters in there, AI. Like, we're optimizing things for AI, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Last I checked, the AI data sets that we're moving back and forth don't optimize very well. This is a Word document where I can compress it and forward it on, and I can spend a few cycles decompressing a 58K Word doc with some images in it. Like, this is a multi-gig or multi-terabyte, like, AI research load. I don't know that I want to move this thing very much.
Mhm.
So are we still optimizing like robo solutions for like a few file transfers for unstructured data, or are they taking a new perspective on this to try to optimize the big amounts of data that are going back and forth? And are they optimizing it to end locations, or are they trying to optimize it between clouds? Because if you're talking about the fact that you have these things in Oracle and Google Cloud, it makes me wonder, are you trying to optimize to get between AWS and Google because you need to do things?
Right. Yeah, I mean, obviously they're going to lean into AI as the way to maybe revitalize their fortunes in WAN acceleration. Whether that works or not, we'll see. And just a reminder that Riverbed is owned by the private equity firm Vector Capital, if that gives you any sense of how things are going. Last up, Cisco announced financial results for its third quarter 2025. Revenues were $14 billion, up 11% year over year. Net income was $2.5 billion, up 32% year over year. All business units reported year over year revenue increases. Networking continues to drive the majority of revenues, bringing in just over $7 billion. Security earned $2 billion in revenue, up 54%, much of which is coming from Splunk. Observability was up 24% at $261 million, and collaboration was up 4% at just over $1 billion in revenue. Cisco beat expectations and saw its stock price rise slightly just after it posted its results. In the earnings call, Cisco CEO Chuck Robinson said Cisco brought in $600 million in AI infrastructure orders from web-scale customers. During the earnings call, the potential impact of tariffs came up with investors. Cisco said it's not seeing customers buy more now to get ahead of potential cost increases from tariffs. In other words, they're saying this quarter's results aren't being artificially juiced and they'll see a drop next quarter. Chuck Robbins said of customer spending, quote, "I think the AI transition is just so important that they're going to continue to spend until they absolutely have to stop." Tom, any thoughts on the results?
Well, I'm going to look at what Daniel Newman from the Futurum Group posted about this on LinkedIn when the report came out, and it kind of echoes what Chuck said. This is about how AI is driving purchasing decisions for a lot of other companies. And if you read the news, if you watch the news, man, everybody is hyper focused on GPUs and performance and all of that stuff. And it's something that you and I have talked about for years. That's great. What are you going to do when you have to move the data? And then there's a lot of shrugging emojis, right?
Mhm.
The problem is that companies that don't understand that you cannot run this stuff over your traditional networking. They're starting to realize, well, yeah, I can go out and I can buy all this cool NVIDIA GPU clustering stuff, but it doesn't run 10 gig Ethernet, and it doesn't run over my Cat 5 wiring or my Cat 6 wiring in my walls. You're going to have to go buy new switches, which Cisco has smartly partnered with NVIDIA to provide Spectrum X technologies. You're going to have to buy new secure solutions to prevent that data from leaking everywhere. So I think that Cisco is a huge beneficiary of companies kind of basically having to upgrade or at least buy new equipment to utilize all of the AI that they're building. And if it's not a company that's building their own AI solution, they're renting it from somebody else who needs to skill up and scale up all of their back end. So they're still getting it. I will say though, the one thing that I would challenge in Chuck's statement is, this isn't pull through to avoid tariffs. That's true. However, it is pull through for AI, right? Because once people have built out their AI networks,
Yeah,
are they going to buy anything else?
right. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely in gold rush times. And I've kind of felt like, at least on the hyperscaler side, Cisco is maybe not doing as well as its competitors there, particularly Arista, which I think has a better presence with them. But the place where it does potentially have an advantage is with enterprises, large enterprises who are moving into AI in house and look to Cisco as a trusted partner and may be willing to work with Cisco to build out their AI infrastructure on some Cisco gear. Uh, Although I'm sure NVIDIA is also talking to them and saying, well, you're buying the GPUs from us. We've also got these nice switches, and it all works really nice together. So I think Cisco still has a tough time there, but there are opportunities for them as well.
And I think that NVIDIA is taking that arms dealer approach, right? Is they're going to give you every possible way to get into a network. And this is what we talked about right after Cisco Live Europe. NVIDIA offering a co-branded switch for Spectrum X with Cisco is not as much that they want to partner with Cisco, but they want to get into Cisco networks
Right.
with their NVIDIA Spectrum X technology.
Yes.
They would still prefer that you buy it directly from them as an all-in-one kit, but they understand that the reality of modern networking is that people are more likely to buy from a vendor that they are familiar with than they are to just kind of buy new stuff off the shelf, white box stuff notwithstanding, because we all know that there's a lot of people out there who'd rather buy an edge core switch and run Sonic on it. But I also think that ultimately what's going to happen is that NVIDIA is going to partner with those companies long enough to get their appliances, their networking gear into the organization and show people what Spectrum X looks like. And then they're going to slowly start to nibble away at that because, oh, well, now you need our Bluefield DPUs. And now you need all these other things. And if you're already running all this stuff anyway, you've been running NVIDIA networking under the hood, you might as well go with our switching too.
That's an interesting point that Cisco may be inviting its own competitor in-house, although I don't think it really has a choice. So, and they've also got, the campus moat that I don't know that NVIDIA has any interest in getting into. But yeah, long term, we'll see how this plays out. Just one other note, Cisco is engaged in a partnership with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia around a new Saudi AI infrastructure project called Humain, with HUMAIN, that could lead to the sale of all kinds of Cisco products. I'll just note personally that I think calling this venture Humain strikes me as ironic, given that agents of the Saudi government murdered a Washington Post journalist. It doesn't seem like it's been an impediment to Cisco and other technology companies partnering up on this project. All right, that wraps up the news. Stick around for our Tech Bites conversation with Palo Alto Networks. But before we get to that, Tom, where can folks find you online? Where can they get more from you?
Well, if you want to check out the things that I do for my day job, head over to techfieldday.com or futurumgroup.com. We have a lot of great content over there, including weekly podcasts, just like you guys, and some other writing and stuff like that. I still blog occasionally at networkingnerd.net when I'm eyeball deep in all of the work that I'm doing. But it's lovely to be able to talk to people in the community. I'm also spending most of my time on Blue Sky now as my social media platform of choice. So I'm networkingnerd.net over there. If you want to follow me and, I don't know, send me some dad jokes or something.
Yeah, help them grow that horde. And just a reminder, Tech Field Day recently finished a Mobility Field Day. My co-host on the Packet Protector Network, Jennifer Manella, was there, and we're going to be releasing an episode she recorded at Mobility Field Day, so keep an eye out on that. I'm Drew Conry-Murray. I'm on Blue Sky at DrewCM, blogging at packetpushers.net. Thanks to our sponsor, NordLayer, and stay tuned for our sponsored Tech Bites conversation with Palo Alto Networks on the new Prisma AIRS AI security platform and Prisma Secure Access Browser. That's coming right up. AI is no longer on the horizon. It's part of how people and products are working today. And as AI finds its way into more business applications and processes, it can create new risks. On today's Tech Bites, sponsored by Palo Alto Networks, we talk about how Palo Alto Networks is addressing those risks so that organizations can take full advantage of AI. And in particular, we're going to talk about Prisma AIRS. This is a new platform for AI security, and the Prisma Access Browser, which includes security features for AI. Our guest from Palo Alto Networks is Anand Oswal, Senior VP and General Manager, Network Security. Anand, welcome back to the podcast. And obviously, it's clear that organizations see benefits in adopting AI, but as we know, every new technology brings risks. Can you sort of walk us through the general risks AI is presenting as a business tool to organizations?
Drew, first, thanks for having me. Great to be back with you. Look, I think AI is one of the fastest growing technologies in the history of mankind. I think we've seen the impact of it, especially in the last couple of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about, there are two big aspects to the usage of AI. One is employees are using AI applications, all of us in the office, because we want to get our work done better, faster, be more productive. At the same time, you see organizations, they are building these AI-powered applications because they want to transform their businesses. They want to give better experiences to their end customers. They want to transform their business models. So both of these are happening in parallel. And I think it's important that you secure both these use cases by design. Both employees accessing AI applications, making sure that you have everything covered from visibility, risks, and your data not leaking out, to protecting the applications that you are building, which are AI-powered.
So can you give us sort of a rundown of what the kind of risks we're facing with AI and how they might be different from, traditional technologies everybody's been working with?
Let's talk about the AI applications the organizations are building. If you think about, it's not just taking the existing application, taking the models that we are having right now and putting it together. What happens is that along with that, you're bringing an entire AI ecosystem. You're bringing along with it AI infrastructure, AI tools, plugins, databases. all of these various parts of this AI ecosystem, they talk to each other. They talk to the outside world. And that increases the attack surface, adding newer risks. So think about all the risks that classical applications have, and then you have newer risks. I'll give you an example. You have risks like prompt injection attacks, which what it means is that the attacker is trying to make the model believe it's somebody else, to steal customer data or sensitive data. Or you can have models now generate malicious code, or you can do model DOS attacks, or you can do data leakage of your sensitive data on which what you train the models on. So all of these are adding in newer risks. So when you think of AI security for applications, you got to protect from all the existing risks that we see in applications, but also these newer types of risks, and it has to be comprehensive.
How do you deal with that? How does Palo Alto Networks deal with that? Is this some new security tooling that interacts with an AI, or I guess an LLM? It sounds like a lot of what you were talking about that is going to deal with data loss prevention in a way that we haven't seen and prevent prompt engineering and so on.
So I think it's I think it needs to be holistic. So let me first step back and say when I talk to leaders, what they really want is, first thing they want is visibility. Tell me in my organization what applications and agents I have, who's talking to those applications, what data is those applications and the models trained on, what other sources of data they're connected to, what are the permissions. Because you
okay, so quick qualification on that, Anand, because that's actually interesting. Is this because IT isn't the one who's deploying all the AI tools? It's just any of the users within the business might be deploying them?
Look, your developers are pushing applications into production. IT most likely will be aware of them, but along with the applications, you're bringing in an ecosystem along with it. You're bringing in AI models, you're bringing in AI tools, your plugins, your vector databases, your other sources you're connected to. So all of this needs visibility, right? And then you have these applications talk to each other. They're talking to the outside world, so you need to know what permissions they have. So all of this requires comprehensive visibility as the first step. Then you need to have a very structured approach on, I would say, 5 things that we need to do. First is model scanning. Now, if you think of Ethan in traditional security, we scan code, we scan infrastructure. So the question is like what you're asking me, what's different for these models? The difference is that the risks are now in the data that is used to train the model. The risks are now in the model architecture. The risks are now in the model behavior. That's model scanning. Second thing is that you need to have posture management, posture for applications, posture for agents, posture for models, posture for data, posture for the network. And having this done in real time, alerting you for any deviations. Once you have that, then the third thing I call about is red teaming. Red teaming is doing what an attacker would do, what an adversary would do. Now, what's different in AI applications is that, especially in agents, they don't just execute code. They act, they adapt, they react. So you need to be able to think like an adversary thinks in terms of how you design your red teaming tools. Then you have runtime security. This is the things I talked about earlier: prompt injection, model DOS attacks, malicious code generation, your data leaks, etc. The fifth pillar I talk about is AI agents. As we've seen in the last few months, AI agents are, you see everybody talking about agents. There's surveys that talk about 93% of organizations will use agents in the next 2 years. Now, if you think of agents, they're different than models. If models give you answers, agents give you action, right? When you have agents, you're giving them agency to perform autonomous tasks. Now, to perform these tasks, you usually have a problem where you may give excessive permissions. Agents will have things called memory, right? Because they need to give you answers from short term, but they'll also be personalized to you for the long term. Now, imagine that I am doing things like memory poisoning as an attacker, which will alter the behavior of the agent. So now you have newer risks. So first starts with discovery, model scanning, posture management, red teaming, runtime security, and agent security. All this should be delivered comprehensively through a single platform, not multiple point products and tools that are disjoint and not connected. And that's what Prisma Airs is all about.
Yeah, we'll get to Prisma Airs to get more details in a second, but I think this agent issue is something maybe that folks haven't considered, because these agents are essentially like little workers who have to have permissions to access other systems, because that's the whole point of an agent, to talk to other systems. And so, think of your, permissions and access control structure, and now multiplied by agents running around inside your organization. Yes.
And Anna, just even more than that, you said, oh, it's easy, you over permit, you give too many permissions to an agent, which is something that historically IT has done with people. Where he's like, you know what, I don't want to figure out the granular permissions. Just you're a full admin. Off you go.
Yes.
Please be well behaved. You can't say that to an agent. It's going to do what it wants to do, and if it's got permission to do it, it doesn't have the common sense to know. Yeah, I probably shouldn't press that button.
I think it's also on what permissions are inherited. So if you think about, I talked to a customer that was building an agent that was basically a leads agent. It was basically helping their marketing tools bring more curated information to end customers. So for that, you need to have access to Salesforce. Now, guess what? The excessive permissions, the agent had access to delete and update records in Salesforce instead of read only. So these are the kind of things that we have to be very thoughtful about in terms of when we have agents going.
So it's not that the agent on its own would do anything bad, but an attacker could potentially try to convince that agent, hey, go and delete that database for me.
It's around how you do permissioning. For example, take another example. I don't have access to all the salary information of the company. But say you have an agent that is basically doing that for the company and summarizing everything for somebody. Now, what if I tell the agent to do it on my behalf and it does it for me? Now I made it do things that I don't have permission myself. Right? So these are the kind of things that on over permissioning, what permissions, what you inherit, and then what you do on the runtime behavior in terms of misuse of the tool or misusing or poisoning the memory.
Okay, so you mentioned Prisma Airs. This is a new product or platform that Palo Alto Networks launched. Can you just sort of give us the 10,000-foot view and then we can drill in?
So I talked about the issues that we have with AI applications and agents. Now, you cannot solve tomorrow's battle with yesterday's playbook of a plethora of point products and tools, which now you have the customer stitch it all together and figure out how it all works. It's just too complicated, right? So what we have with Prisma is a single, comprehensive, complete AI security platform that discovers your entire AI ecosystem, okay, assesses your risks on posture, risks on runtime, and does provide runtime protection for applications and agents, all done comprehensively, unified workflows, unified manageability, sharing of intelligence across these point products to give a complete solution to the end customer. So that they
Is this a cloud service?
Yeah, so they can deploy the applications bravely, not worry about how do I transform my business.
Is this a cloud service, Anand, or is this something that sits on my firewall, my Palo Alto Networks firewall I might already have?
It's a way you can consume it. You can it's through a platform, and it does all of these functions for you cohesively, fully integrated.
So one of the things you mentioned earlier was red teaming. Can you talk about how Prisma Airs does that for me?
Yeah, look, Prisma Airs red teaming is built on a multi-agent architecture, right? Because, like I said, especially when we think of agents, I think we talked about it. They don't just execute code; they'll act, they'll adapt themselves, they'll react. That's just like an adversary would think. So if I'm a financial organization, I want to reach financial data. So I'm trained on specifics of what is sensitive for my organization. So I want my AI red teaming to be able to accommodate that and to be able to act like a real adversary using a multi-agent architecture. And that's what we do with our comprehensive red teaming.
Wait, so the red teaming you're doing is AI driven itself?
Yeah. Because it has to adapt.
We're using AI to test AI. That's what you're saying here.
Well, you have to be able to be adaptive, right? Because if you think of attackers, they're not just basing things on how they do statically. They will act like how we will act in terms of adapting to situations that have there, put all these things together and do it. I want to mimic how an adversary thinks, because now I'm dealing, Ethan, with not just, I'm thinking how a model will behave, how a model will interact, what a model would do in this scenario. So I have to plan for those.
We also talked about the Prisma Access browser. Can you talk about what Palo Alto Networks is doing there in regards to AI?
Absolutely. So you think about, we have data which says that majority, 70-75, depending on which survey you read, of employees in organizations are using AI-powered applications. Now, IT may be aware of it, not aware of it, doesn't matter. They're going to use it. Because as an employee, I'm getting more productive. I'm getting my work done faster. I can impress my boss by getting it done quickly, right? So now it's good, right? Use of AI will help me be more productive. But if you think of IT or organizations, what you really want is that you want to have complete visibility of AI usage, and then you want to have some controls. Like, these are the kind of applications I want to allow, but these are applications I don't want to allow. These are the applications I can limit usage on. And once I allow sensitive applications to use, how do I control that my data the most important crown jewel doesn't leak out. And all of these applications give you responses back. These responses could have a phishing link or malware. How do you prevent from that? Right? So that is what we want to do with AI access security. Now, if you think about it, majority of these applications, or all of them, are accessed from the browser, right? Your browser is becoming the next target anyways, right? When you're accessing things, you want to access securely. The traditional consumer browser are not built, have built-in security. So with Prisma Access browser is a secure Chromium-based browser that allows you to shop, to learn, to chat, to work, just like you do on a regular browser, but with security inbuilt into it. Now, two things I'll tell you, Drew and Ethan. First is that if you think of newer attacks, they're getting more and more sophisticated. Think of an attacks where you have things across multiple sessions that reassembled only in the browser. So the browser is the only place where you can cache this advanced malware. Second, you'll always have scenarios where you either can't decrypt things because of technical reasons or business reasons. Browser seeing everything before it's encrypted, right? So it's the best place for me to provide protection against these advanced threats. And that's why having you access this application to the browser provides amazing security benefits without compromising on user experience.
I hadn't considered the aspect of certain malware is only going to be fully assembled in the browser, and so it could evade detection, depending on how it's been deployed, until it actually gets to you.
Because it's
never thought about
coming
that.
across multiple sessions. Each session on it has nothing, but when it all comes together, it gets assembled in the browser. And
you mentioned, just so we call that out directly, it is based on Chromium, meaning it should work with most applications, most SaaS services, and so on.
Yeah. 99% of the world's browsers are Chromium based, so it's not a problem at all.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, then, to wrap this up, what would you say, Anand, differentiates Palo Alto Networks' approach to AI security risks?
We want to make sure that we can secure AI by design. So employees, when they're accessing these AI pod applications, we want them to browse bravely with Prisma Access browser. As your developers are building AI-powered applications to transform your business, to give new experiences to your end customers, we want you to deploy those AI applications bravely, knowing that we're securing all usage of AI consistently.
Well, Anand, I know there's a lot more here to dig into, but we are out of time. If folks want to get more details for themselves about Prisma AIRS, about the Prisma Secure Access browser, where can they go find information?
Browse bravely with Prisma Access browser, deploy bravely with Prisma AIRS. A ton of information, Drew, on paloaltonetworks.com.
Okay, that's easy, paloaltonetworks.com. Well, thanks, Anand, for being here, and thanks to Palo Alto Networks for being a sponsor. Sponsors ensure that the Packet Pushers can continue to offer high-quality, deeply technical content for your professional development for free. That includes a dozen technical podcasts for professional development on networking, security, IPv6, DevOps, and more. We've got an industry blog, 2 weekly newsletters, a community Slack group, a YouTube channel, even an IRC group. You can find everything at packetpushers.net. It's all free with no login required. You can hear us on Spotify, Thought Lead with us on LinkedIn, and if you would, leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. Last but not least, remember that too much networking would never be enough.